Hey guys, in today's video we'll be reviewing the 2019 Audi A5, and this model here, the 2019 model, is the second generation, which came out in 2017. Now the A5 comes in two shapes, the coupe and what you have here, which is what Audi calls a sportback. And what's great about the sportback is that it has the practicality of more seats than a coupe, but unlike a traditional sedan, you do have a hatchback, which means that it's a lot more practical and you can store, larger, bulkier items in the back here compared to your standard sedan shape. Now the Audi A5, this one here comes with a 2-litre inline-4 turbocharged engine, and this is the Quattro version, which is Audi's all-wheel drive system. But if you want more power, of course, you can step up to the Audi A5 and the Audi RS5 as well. Now this particular car here is for sale. You can buy this car from GVI, which is down in Penrose, and I'll put a link down below in the description if you are interested in buying this car. If there are other cars that you're interested in buying, not this one, then they do have a large stock of over 300 cars, so head on down there if you're keen to buy some cars. We've actually had a great experience buying from them in the past, and so we'd highly recommend you check these guys out. Now this is one of the best cabins in the compact car segment. The switchgear, the different use of materials, they all look very premium. They are very physically satisfying to interact with, and they're also very functional. And this cabin looks particularly nice when it's dark and you can see all of the ambient lighting. The variety of different control mechanisms also means that you can manipulate them without having to actually look at them, unlike with a large touchscreen. And I'll show you what I mean on this HVAC control system here. Now you've got these lovely temperature knobs here with aluminium knurling on the sides, which are very simple and easy to use. Then you've got these touch sensitive 3-way toggle switches. So as you can see, I roll over it and I can go up, down, sync, fan speed, airflow, and you've got independent airflow if you and your partner can't agree on where the air should be blowing. And then you've got this, obviously, this lovely screen here. So your climate controls are all very easy to use, and all the information is here and not tied up in the infotainment screen. See, what I understand is, why on earth would you want to replace this lovely system here with a giant piss-off touchscreen? Like, what's the advantage? And the worst thing is when people say in reviews, well, at least the climate control is all in the same position on the screen. Well, there's no point replacing this with a touchscreen if the controls are always in the same place. Now, ergonomically, everything in this cabin is well positioned and an easy access for the driver. And the steering wheel feels really good as well, although I'm a bit disappointed that the adjustment is manual. And the problem with manually adjustable steering wheels is that you cannot link it to a memory seat position, unlike other cars where you can, and they're electronic and you press a button and of course it moves the steering wheel into your position. I do also like how Audi has their volume controls down here rather than up here. It's just much easier for the passenger to change the volume without having to lean forward all the time. And the gear selector as well, it kind of reminds me of sort of a fighter jet throttle lever, but it also serves another purpose as well. You can also use it as a palm rest when you interact with the Audi MMI controller over here as well. Now there's one thing ergonomically that is a bit weird in this car, and it's to do with the right-hand drive version of this car, and that's the Audi Drive Select switches. They're way over there, and if you're quite tall and you have to sit far back, you've got to lean all the way far forward to change your driving mode. Now, this issue isn't a problem in the left-hand drive cars because it stays there. So Audi is they're just too lazy to basically move these buttons over to the right-hand side. But other than that, very ergonomically designed and very easy to use. Now the adjustability in the seats are pretty good, nothing amazing, but it's got all the normal adjustments that you've got. You've got lumbar support, you've got thigh extension support, which is really nice. I do like the backrest and headrest position. It means I can lean my head back whilst looking forward without sitting like this. But one big con, I do think, is that the driver's seat is a bit too high. When you look down over the hood, it feels like you're sitting on the car rather than sitting inside the car. Now, the infotainment is fairly straightforward and easy to use. I've got no issues with it. I do like interacting with it with the controller here as well. Everything works simply and well. But you also do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but not wirelessly, just wired. You also, in this particular model, have the optional virtual cockpit, which is Audi's large LCD screen that replaces your traditional speedometer and tachometer dials. Now, it's a really, really cool screen. I think one of the best, again, in this car segment. Even though it's highly configurable, most people are going to use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And if you do that, you cannot see your maps on the gauge cluster when you're using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. And you can see your music, but you can't browse through playlists and all that on here. So the functionality of the virtual cockpit is fairly limited when you're using Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Now, this car does come standard with a 10-speaker sound system, and it's fairly good. Sounds fairly bright. The bass is decent, but you can opt for the 19-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system as well. And if you do care about your music, I would definitely look into that as an optional extra. Now, one thing that I have particularly noticed in this car is how Audi has paid attention to so many little details that are really, really cool. So, for example, I was driving and I winded the volume all the way to 0. And when you wind the music down, the volume to 0, it straight away pauses the song, which just makes so much sense. And then you turn the volume up and then it resumes the song. Inside the vehicle settings, there are so many things that you can configure. For example, I like that there's an option where you can allow the adaptive cruise control to remember the distance that you selected previously. The ambient lighting configurability, you can change the color of the strips and the surface light, and you can change the brightness for different areas of the ambient lighting. It's also a very user-friendly car because there are lots of little messages that pop up telling you how to do things. So, for example, with the memory seat position, when I first use it, I press the set button. And once I pressed set, on the infotainment it said, now press the number. And in many cars, you don't know whether you've got to hold it down or press it, and then wait, and then press the number. And this car told me all of that. I left the car and I had my phone still plugged in, and there was a message which said, "Hey, you've left your phone in the car." And if that wasn't enough, it even told me verbally out the speakers, "Hey, you've left the phone in your car," because there's a very good chance that when you leave your car, you're not looking at any of the screens.
Your cell phone is still in the vehicle.
And that's a really good way of how they've really paid attention to detail in this car. Here in the back seats, it's fairly comfortable. The headroom is obviously compromised by this lower roofline here, and the leg room is standard for the compact car segment. The biggest pro, I would say, with the back seats is that you do have, again in this car, you've got the optional 3-zone climate control, which also comes with heated rear seats in the back, which is great. But the biggest con of the back seats in this car is this. This is as far as the back windows go down. That's huge. And I'm assuming it's because of the design of the door, the glass can't fit down any further. Now, when I first drove the A5, I was incredibly impressed by how smooth the ride was. And I would say probably the suspension in this is perhaps best in class, best for the compact car segment. Now, the suspension in this, the setup is a 5-point multi-link, both for the front and rear wheels. And that does offer you a good balance of ride comfort, but also good handling as well. Now, the engine also adds to the smooth experience in this car. It's a very quiet and smooth engine. You can barely hear it when you're driving. But when you do put your foot down, it does come to life. Ooh, that's fun. And it actually sounds pretty good. and very refined for a 4-cylinder, which traditionally 4-cylinders are not the smoothest of engines, but they've come a long way. Now the transmission in this car is a 7-speed dual clutch transmission, which means of course the shifts are very quick, both in sport and if I put it here in the manual mode, you see very, very quick shifts. But surprisingly, the shifts are also very smooth. And as you know, dual clutches aren't always, known to be very smooth with their shift changes. Now the throttle in this A5 is very, very responsive, and it is fun to drive fast, and it will get you from 0 to 100 in 5.7 seconds, which is a pretty respectable number, particularly for a 2-litre turbocharged inline-4. But you do pay for it. The fuel economy in this car is not that great. I did expect it to be slightly better, being the sort of smaller engine variant of the A5 and compared to the S5 and the RS5. But I've been getting between like 11 to about 13 litres per 100k. So it's not great. I'm sure on the highway it's a whole lot better, but at least for mixed driving and city driving, nothing particularly impressive with the fuel economy. Now of course you can change your driving modes by using the drive select button over here, which I mentioned earlier is a bit awkward for the driver. But anyway, you can actually go straight to your sport mode by just using the gear lever down here, which is nice and handy. And I actually really like the sport mode in this car. Some sport modes in some cars are too aggressive. They're kind of like more of a track mode, and they're constantly in low gears, and it's just revving the engine out all the time, and it's just too much. But the sport mode in this is just right. I comfortably drive around in sport mode because it's responsive, it holds the gears, but then it does upshift eventually and feel a lot smoother. Now the sound isolation in this car is also fairly good, and even with pillarless windows as well in this car, there's very minimal wind noise, very minimal tyre noise, and it does a good job of cocooning you inside this cabin. The visibility is also great. Maneuvering this car is very easy. There's actually another extra little window in the back, where if you look back and you are trying to see your blind spot, it's very easy to look through that. And also to help with maneuvering the car, you do have your bird's eye view camera as well, which does make it easy, parking in tight spots and that kind of thing. This car does come with a host of driver tech that you would expect from most cars in 2019. You've got your lane departure stuff, you've got your driver drowsiness detection, that kind of thing. Of course, you've got radar cruise control. It doesn't surprisingly have the steering assisted in any way, which is a bit annoying. But at least the radar cruise does go down to 0 k's an hour and can drive in traffic with your hands on the wheel, of course. Alright guys, well that's pretty much our perspective on the Audi A5. Beautiful car. I actually think in the compact car segment, this is a pretty high contender, I've got to say. I'm more of a Mercedes person myself, but this has definitely impressed me in many ways. Now, again, I mentioned this car is for sale down at GVI in Auckland. And I do want to take the chance to say thank you again for Hayden and the team there for allowing us to have this car for the last week or so and to really get to know the car. I've found it really helpful to give you guys an informative video on the Audi A5. And please don't forget to subscribe and like the video as well if you found it helpful. And if I missed anything, do drop it down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.